Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending this session. And it's facilitated and hosted by the ESIP Data Stewardship Committee. My name is Go Payne. I go by Payne. I'm the chair of the committee. And we have agenda today. I will start by making introduction to the community as well as provide some high-level context for the session and some initial findings of recent Data Stewardship Committee activities. Then we'll have a invited talk by one and only Shirley Stahl, and she's going to talk about the RDA complex citation objective recommendations. And the second half of the session, we're going to be a working session, and I'll have a couple templates that I will go over with everybody and invite everybody to provide review comments or enter. They are organizations' practices. And for the last 5 minutes, I'll provide some quick closing remark. So I started about talking a little bit about the Data Stewardship Committee, and our goal is to develop and foster practices and standards that ensure continued and reliable information content, quality access to, and usability of Earth system science data. And we promote excellence in Earth science data stewardship, and that consistent of preservation, quality management, as well as future data management workforce development. And for this fiscal year, we focused on understanding the existing organization stewardship practices for implementing the FAIR principles and developing crosswalks for enhanced data sharing across organization boundaries. So instead, it's like a bridge. We build the crosswalks for different way of doing things, cross boundary and system. And the current key activities has been, since October last year, has been to gather, consolidate, and systemize the organization's stewardship practices on fair quality measures, such as persistent identifier, rich metadata, data format, vocabulary, etc. Those are the core concept for the FAIR principles. The vision is to have a future where data interoperability is achieved not through by doing the same thing the same way everywhere, but through providing clear machine actionable description of stewardship practices, meanings, and interfaces that allow diverse systems to work together seamlessly. It's similar to when we introduce each other, we say, what's my name, what I do, what's the best way we can collaborate. So for this session, we started by trying to addressing one of the key challenges for global science is to enabling effective data sharing across diverse systems, disciplines, and applications. And we know doing so within one organization is difficult, and across different organizations system is more challenge. So one of the ways is perhaps to standardize practices among organizations that helps us to do so. And alternatively is to establish machine-readable crosswalks that allow them to talk to each other. And we think that's a good step forward, and which is also identified as the need of ESIP community. And I just released a session report to Zenodo before the last Friday, and that summarized the outcome of a data session, the session we had ESIP 2020, July 2025, its data governance and interoperability. And I have the reference at the late end of the slides as well as the meeting notes. So if you are interested in that, you can take a look offline. And I'd like to hear more from you as we finalize that report. So to making progress towards that goal, and we have begun working by gathering and synchronizing the standard stewardship practices across organization within context of the FAIR principles. And it's the main goal is to facilitate data sharing cross disciplines. That includes the cross organization boundaries, cross disciplines. So in the next few slides, I'm going to provide an overview of some initial findings based on the activities we carry out so far. And the first one we have done is to focus on the persistent identifiers. And here are the examples that we have collected from the projects and organizations. It represents 7 projects, 30 plus repositories. And here is the assessment metadata. And for this part, I color-coded to indicate that the pink one is the level 1, which is rarely used, and the light green is limited use, and the medium green is established, which is the level 3, and the dark green is indicated. And for the data set, institution and metadata publication and software code, people, physical samples, and mission and project. You can see that for institution, although it's an emerging use, but ROR, which is one type of identifier, is commonly used. And for data set and publication documents, DOI has pretty strong usage, and it's being consistent use by all organizations. And the software, the emerging practice is to have release to GitHub and link to Zenodo to get DOI. And same thing for people using Occurred ID. And it's in a very early stage for the mission to use various different kind of IDs. But for the physical sample, the one-time ID is utilized and is very mature for some at least for one EarthChem and ID2 project, but for other ones are still just emerging and early state of usage. So similarly, if you're looking at other ones, instrument sensor vocabularies, they are much less mature compared to some of the artifact digital object, or we can call it entity. So result like this that we would like to continue to collect and consolidating. And here is an example for NASA, Earth Science Data and Information Systems. And for on the left, I have put together the definition of levels, and I do not want you to read through them. It's more for reference. And I'm going to see whether I can minimize this. And here is the example for practice for different type of identifier for different types of entities. And here is for on the most right is for the maturity level for that particular entities. And a similar diagram, we can do so for each organizations that we collected. And one can sort of consolidate the practices into this semantic structure diagram, conceptual. Start with the organizations that has a property with names, or one can also have another property like descriptions for all of them. And the organization implements this particular practice, which is for this use case is the persistent identifier that has the property of a type. And the practice itself has the maturity, which associated with the property of a level. And for the practice itself, assigns identifier that has a type that applies to entity that has a type. So to generalize this, we could say for the organizations we have names, the open bracket is open list, means it can continue to grow. And for practice type, we can have PIDs and rich metadata, vocabularies, et cetera, et cetera. And for this session, we'll continue to work on the PID and metadata and start to work on the data format. We can create a template for any of the practices. For the maturity, it's a closed level. We have 5 levels, level 1 to level 5. And for the identifier type, we again have the one we collected. We can always add it. Same thing for entity. We have some common entities, but we could also add entity type as we go. So for the rich metadata, the second use case we have been doing is rich metadata. This is one of the screenshot what had so far. Again, it's not so much for you to read, just to indicate we have collected different organizations. I wanted to zoom in to some of the fields, just the top ones, to give you a better sense. And the rich metadata, we use the definition provided by one of the paper, 2029 FINA et al. And that has the title, resource type, creator, summary, description. So that uses currently as our reference entity and reference elements for that particular metadata. And we kind of map the NASA, NOAA, USGS data 1. In our 2020 paper, I also have a reference later on to this particular field. And now we're adding the scammer.org and Stanford University as well as the data set to have a better sense in terms how they crosswalk, how they relate to each other. And one of the things that become pretty clear is even if the fields are captured, the implementation, when you implemented what the term you use can be different. So for example, for the title, some use entry title, some use name. And for the abstract, some use a summary, some use a description. So one of the summary of initial finding is that even if the metadata schema generally support basic discovery or citation, and the cross-organization variations exist in the naming convention. So the other two findings are the DOIs represent the most mature and widely adapted practice for identifying dataset and publications. And practice for project mission is emerging. and they tend to use different identifiers that might point out a opportunity to us for us to develop the way forward to reach guidance, some kind of convergence. So path forward, we're going to continue gather and collect, consolidate, and synthesize the practices on this and other fair quality measures, and develop. I have started drafting a report on the initial findings to share with the ESIP and wider community. When we done a draft, we'll release it to ESIP, Zunuru ESIP community. Idea is to share results fast and improve upon as we continue to share the landscaping and share the practice that we each other use differently. And to make this goal successful, and your contribution is critical. And I'm looking forward to a productive working session. And the slides are linked in the session notes, and have the references that in terms of the FAIR principles and the FAIR quality measures, and as well as the report I mentioned earlier. I also add a couple other references, and I think it will be useful if you're interested in learning more about the FAIR, and also the outcomes delivers of the World FAIR project. There, what they're trying to do is a larger, the global landscaping to collect how different organizations implement FAIR, and in order to reach some kind of consensus. So I'm adopting a very similar approach there, but on the smaller scale, it's more about earth science here. I also have the link, and they are also in the notes as well. It's the template for those three. And when we start the second part working session, I'll go over, work through them really quickly before we get to the working part. That's all for my presentation, and I don't see the chat, so I'm going to stop sharing and see.
There's nothing in the chat, Pings.
Thank you, Alicia. So we will move on to the invited presentation by Shirley Stahl. And I don't believe we need introduction to Shirley, but I think we do have a couple the new community fellow here. And if you don't mind, perhaps just have a quick introduction.
Absolutely. Peng, I can't imagine that every single person on this call does actually know me. I actually stopped coming to data stewardship meetings after a few years because you were doing such a brilliant job and you guys were so fantastic. And I wanted to absorb all of it. So thank you for this wonderful talk. I am your Open Science Leadership Vice President at AGU, and my work is 100% outward facing. So it's working on challenges having to do with data, having to do with software, and a number of other different aspects in those areas where the stakeholders are quite complex are the types of things that I try to dig in and help address. Gosh, I could talk about it for so long. And there's nothing I do that doesn't include the community. So if we haven't had a chance to work together yet, I look forward to it. There's actually quite a lot of stuff coming up, as you can imagine. Today, I'm going to talk about the complex citations This is a fun project. It meets a really specific need. And then once we identified that, it turned out there was a whole bunch of use cases that could be mitigated with this idea. So it started at an AGU town hall. There's a slide in here about the time. It stayed as a scrappy group. And then once we were ready to bring in other disciplines, we moved over to the Research Data Alliance and moved from a working group to an implementation group. And if you've never done anything with the Research Data Alliance, it's free to join, and that link will take you over to the page where this implementation interest group is located. Please join. You can get, it doesn't cost you anything, and you'll be able to get the current updates on this particular work. So I have that QR code on a number of slides. There's a lot of us working on this. To a little humorously, Jonathan Blythe spoke to Peng about this work, and we have a conflict for this breakout at the moment. He's actually running another complex citation effort. So if you like the technical side of this, you may just want to ditch here and run over to where he's doing the implementation of the complex citation generator. So if you know what this work is all about, jump over there. But if not, stay here. I'll get you caught up, and then you can watch that video later. Jonathan has been an incredible ambassador for this work, and I'm just so grateful. And thank you, Peng, for letting us speak. So, okay, I'm going to scoot us along. So I'm going to introduce it to you, the group and the effort. What is a complex citation? What are the recommendations? That document has been published. I'll get you that. You can, I believe it's in the Zenodo community. Peng was just mentioning Zenodo. And then what are the ramifications around data stewardship? And that's what's unique about this particular talk. So you'll see that I clearly stole slides from what we presented at International Data Week just a few months ago. But I think that's obvious. But I think a lot of it's going to be new for all of you. I don't know that complex citation has reached you. If you've heard reliquary in the last few years, it is the same thing. We morphed it. Here, I think this is our, yep, okay. I'll bring reliquary back up in just a moment because there's a humorous moment that we all have to appreciate. It's very hard to name a thing, and I've gotten myself into a little bit of trouble when we started with reliquary. But what is this? So what is a complex citation? So I'm gonna read you the left out loud. So complex citation is to enable creators and other contributors for data, digital objects, and obviously the digital part of physical samples, right? The IGSN specifically, to receive credit and better track the continued and growing value of a digital asset born from its original funding. It really is to enable this infrastructure that you're all building with the maturity spreadsheets that Peng just shared. It's one of the pieces that you're going to need for all of that to actually work together. And so that work is really important for everyone to understand and track implementation of all of the different persistent identifiers. And we're looking ahead down one particular path specific to linking data and digital objects and software and such to a paper or technical report. That is we're living in here, that one space. What are all the things that supported that moment in time such that more than just the researchers can be included in credit? And when we think about all of the different aspects and complexities of what we're trying to do, we always put in the front of our mind, this is forward leaning on credit. We can get stuck in provenance. We can get stuck in richness of metadata, which is wonderful and lovely. But the more complicated it is, the harder it's going to be to implement. So let's tap it back. In order to assure that automated attribution such that credit can be applied when that paper is published to everybody who had support, were they in the room or not. Like if they were at the repository, they should get credit. If they were at the facility, they should get credit. If they got all of the funding for the core, they should get credit. How do we do that? How do we make that happen? So this is what we're attempting. And let's see. The first use case we had was, if you know Deb Agarwal, she's Ameriflex. She retired, she came back. I have kids who boomeranged in my house, but this is a boomerang at your job. She's at Lawrence Berkeley Labs. And if you're in that space, you know her really well. She came to the AGU town hall. I think it was 2020. I think we were all online together in that horrible year. And we were holding a town hall about why data citation is still hard. Peter Fox was there, and many of you know Peter. He very sadly passed away, but I remember him being quite emphatic. And Deb Agarwal was emphatic. And the question was, if you have, let's say, 40 or 50 data sets that you want to cite in the paper, how do you do that? Because the journals will turn you away. They'll say, no, put it in the supplement or consolidate or do something. We're not keen on that many citations in the reference section. True for AGU journals as well. So AGUs live in that problem area too. And because many of you know that I've rocked the boat on the number of citations and quality of citations and all of that, and that's why pretty much every paper published in AGU has at least one data citation. So yay, at least one. But this is the other end. What if you're trying to do a really good job and you have data and images and video and software and physical samples and and you want to make sure it's all included? Frankly, the journals are not helping. They push back. And that is not something we're going to solve quickly. Maybe in my lifetime, maybe not, probably not. I'm just going to nudge you in that direction. Probably not. So how can we, as we're heading into publishing, duck down, like get all of our digital objects in an easy to submit way, get through the publication process, have them come out having not been kiboshed, which happens today. There's a paper on that. Can put that in the chat for you. You can read about how things get kiboshed. And then the attribution takes place. So that's what we're talking about. So you can see here, transparency, all of the other stuff, you can read that. Okay, I'm going to scoot along. So we have two words, complex citation object, CCO. We are continuing to use that term, although I have promised the community that if do you know a social scientist? I'm sure you do. They would never use the word complex, like not in a million years. So why did we think this was a great idea? Well, frankly, we were getting out of the hole of having used the word reliquary, a box of special things. If you happen to be religious, you'll know what a reliquary is. Bad idea to use that one. So we went from bad to not so great either. We'll have a new word. If you're into coming up with new terms and checking out conflicts with words and I mean, my gosh, all of our taxonomy folks just live a good life when it comes to picking a new word. You can help us. We don't have an answer. We have a long list of suggestions. I'll leave it there. So join us if you're really good at that, because I could use somebody who understands how to make a good acronym. This will be a DOI type. It'll be a DOI type. So in your charts, you have DOI for the software, GitHub's Zenodo link. You have the DOI for the paper. You have the DOI for the data. This will be another DOI type. All right. So that'll help you on your charting. And then inside that CCO is very simple metadata. It is essentially a list of citations. So instead of putting in the paper, you put them here as like a package of digital object citations that support the paper or the technical report. So there could be a couple different use cases here. We intend for this to be used for each of the figures within the IPCC reports. And that's a really great use case to get attention because that's such an important report. And we call it a linked digital object. Don't confuse this with a linked data object. We're hitting zero on picking good vocabulary, like zero. Complex is not good. Digital sounds like data. Everything's confusing. So just just know that we might not be super proud of exactly how we called it, but this is the package, the complex citation object, and everything inside of it is a linked digital object. CCO, LDO, there you go. Okay, just live with it. If you want to rename it, come to the meeting, help me out. Clearly, that is not my strong suit. So we published the recommendations. You can see them down. You can see the link down below, and this is a summary. So it would fit on one slide. You've got capturing. It's important that we capture enough detail to ensure proper credit, traceability, and transparency of cited materials, and it's machine actionable. So leading with credit, like, yes, it's going to be transparent. Yes, it's going to be traceable, but it bloody well is going to get credit. The second one, this is one where we're going to just spend a couple extra seconds. The CCO itself, we see that as an administrative object. We are not adding value here, not like a Shakespeare collection, right? A CCO is literally an administrative object. You don't get credit just by putting one together. That's part of what you're doing to support your paper. You don't get credit for creating your reference section. So that's the same thing. We really don't want the creators of the CCO. That is not something you get credit for. It's all of the different LDOs inside of it. So that's an important criteria. It's all everything inside that gives primary attribution to that paper. So, okay. It's going to be an appropriate identifier. So it's stable, identifiable, versioned, resolvable, persistent. We should have probably said global or resolvable in here. I'm trying to remember if the recommendation actually said global or resolvable. Let's say it did. That's really important. Thus why we are leaning towards working with DataCite and having it be a DOI type. That it will be a standardized structure. This last part is because I talked to the indexers while we were working on the design, and two PID graph levels. Okay, what that means is we will not cite a complex citation object inside a complex citation object. So it won't be recursive. So that is what that means. And that's fine. That's fine. It's no problem. Well, I'm sure many of you will have questions. That's cool. I can't wait. Maybe you can find it. If the indexers weren't as important as they are to the infrastructure of research and credit, I would say, you know what, technology can handle recursion. Everything's going to be fine. But they are important, so we comply. And that this remains open, accessible, and flexible for a number of use cases, open licensing, and sufficient metadata. So this is what we took into the complex citation implementation IG, which is the next group to spin up on this work. And the IG means we don't have the 18-month limit that a working group has. So that's nice, because it's going to take us a while to implement. We have 3 different task groups. I'm realizing adoption doesn't actually have the word task group there, but in reality it should. And we did get started on technical and implementation. We meet every Monday at 2 time zones, 2 different time periods to accommodate different time zones. And we go between implementation and technical and go back and forth. The next one coming up is technical on this coming Monday. We just did implementation. And I will need to insert adoption. We did not start adoption yet because we needed to build up the other 2. But probably coming into February, I'll get adoption going. I meant it to be January, but I think we're gonna need a little bit more time on technical and implementation. The implementation guidelines are basic draft is almost ready. So it's a good time to jump in, read through it, make sure we have everything accounted for. And the technical task group we're already engaged with DataCite to understand the best way to take steps forward. And that's early conversations. So here is that sequence of events. This is where Deb Agarwal said, listen, I need to cite a whole bunch of data. How do we do it? We started. It was a fantastic use case that turned into a project. We got the RDA plenary 19, we got our birds of a feather. If you know how RDA works, that's how you usually start. Of course, it was super popular. Of course, I'm sorry. Let my egocentric head go. Of course, it was super popular. You never know if it's going to be a course or not. I mean, honestly, luckily it was super popular. And then the working group created the recommendations. Those were published last year. And we converted ourselves into an interest group, which was approved. And we spun up the 2 task groups. We gave the update at plenary last year, which was in Brisbane. And now we'll spin up the adoption task group and move on. So I think that gets me to our last slide. I didn't see what was in the chat. Panger, were you just telling me to hurry up? Oh, it was a question. Okay, all right.
No, if somebody would like to have a DOI, I think I'll let you do that after you're done with your presentation. It's great.
I can pop in links. Okay, thanks. So here are things that are very specific to what you guys are working on. So we're making sure credit comes first is important. And we're really, because you all know, you're living the fact in the work that you're doing that the publishing workflow only embraces in its services and infrastructure a DOI, not software heritage ID, not a handle, not an ARC. And this is not good for us because there are other ways of identifying a digital object that need to be included. So, and I think Matt Marinick, I saw you were on earlier, but Matt is leading a RCN on facility and instrument identifiers that will include an RRID, that will include other types of IDs. So it's really important that we give credit to those facilities, repositories, instrumentation that were critical for that research. And there needs to be a place to do that. And we really see this as being a easy to use, duck under the journal limitations, and be able to get those, connect those digital objects and infrastructure into what the research used. For those of you who are part of repositories, certainly a repository can create a CCO, but very commonly, all of the elements for a CCO are going to come from many places. So we do intend the generator for a CCO to be cross repository, but you could certainly host one. You can certainly host something that generates a CCO. I don't have a better word for that. We call it a generator. So if you have a relationship with DataSite, you should be able to implement a generator. But when you think about it, please think about it as being not your own holdings, but anything could go in there. And we want to be very inclusive of PIDs. So all of the different digital objects, all of the people who contributed, and you're going to go, oh, but Shelley, what do you mean people? Okay, all right, that's a good question. We're grappling with that right now. And we'd love you to be part of this conversation. Because Kirsten Leonard said at AGU in December, she said, it was a researcher assessment meeting. I'm not sure she's on this call or not, but how do you make sure that that EarthChem, her repository, gets credit from a paper the data cited, but she's not seeing anywhere where there's a connection to her repository? And if you, as metadata experts you are, you go, oh, it's so easy. You cite the data, and then inside that metadata is an identifier, a ROR, to EarthChem, right? Like you go, oh, of course, it goes like this, and that. But where is it that we actually see that rendered? We don't really see it rendered yet. How can we connect those dots? So you could say to me, listen, Shelley, I want you to be a purist. Don't let anybody put a ROR in here. It needs to be, the ROR should be associated with the digital object that's cited. And I would say to you, yes, but. By the way, at AGU, they don't teach us yes, but. They teach us yes, and. Don't ever say yes, but. That's not nice. That's actually quite bad. Don't say yes, but. Say yes, and. So, all right. So I'm going to say to you, yes, and. Yes, and. Because we can't render that right now, is there harm in that ROR being included? No, but what if there's double dipping? Like, all right, I'll tell you what. If we're double dipping on repositories, have at it. Those repositories are so important. I would rather double dip than have nothing. So this is argument. These are the discussions we're having right now. How tight should we be on what should be included? And we're leaning on don't be tight. Don't be tight. Get everything in there. And you're all whirling on what that means. Yep, we are too. So we'd love you to join us. We're whirling on that. And then I think as we are better able to see and credit is more apparent, then we can say, oh, we need to tighten it up. Sure, I'd be ready then. Yeah, let's tighten it up. And we're including things that are brittle. So if the data are in some sort of URL, right? Because not everything has a DOI, not everything's where it should be. That's fine. Put it there. It's not going to generate credit because all the stuff isn't there, but at least you'll have it and it can go through and it's accurate. And the technical team is working on the relationships. I would speak to that, but you're all experts and you're going to see right through me. I'm not going to be able to hold up my end of the conversation, but they are working on how to identify what those relationships are and how that is rendered. Is that part of the DOI metadata? And right now we're kind of arguing that it shouldn't be. It should actually be on the landing page. So if you have an opinion on that, which I probably just lit fires underneath half of you, I have an opinion. Please join the group. We'd love to get that all incorporated. And Peng, I think that's my last. Yeah, and then we're back to just welcome you all to join. And this is an incredible group of folks to actually engage in the conversation.
Thank you so much, Shirley.
Oh my gosh.
It's always fun listening to your presentation. I think the question in the chat, I'll let you do it offline. Any other question? We do have some time. So I wanted to provide a little bit background. As Shirley mentioned, Jonathan has reached out to me saying, is there a way we can integrate our effort? And said, definitely the first thing I can see is the PIDs. So you got to have a PID for people, PID for repositories, and PID for publishers and the service providers. Nowadays, not just the like data producer or the person who wrote that paper does everything. It's a whole village and everybody is involved in getting that data set published, make it useful and useful by users.
Yeah, and so interestingly, here's the DOI for the paper. Interestingly, in a recent conversation, because we keep coming back at it different ways, because this will be the entire workflow for automated attribution, like the creation of a PID all the way through the crediting of having used that PID, and that's not in good shape. So we're questioning like data attribution to start with, like if you legitimately got it all the way through, can you actually see that you got credit for it? And that's up in the air right now. So I have in my notes actually, what about the ORCID? Mm-hmm. Why can't we put an ORCID in here? And so that caused everybody to go, wait a hot minute. What does it mean to put an ORCID in here? So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the things like the implementation, how to render like tablet as a DOI for people, for papers, is still in the works. But that's okay. But what we can do is to encourage people to get the DOI, so you can be identified uniquely, right? Or DOI occurred. When I say DOI, I mean PID, because I know there's 3 GoPain. I'm aware of 3 GoPains, but some of the popular names, you could have hundreds of them. And which one of the person among the same names did that particular work? You have to have a persistent identifier in order your credit uniquely and correctly. So I think that's what we're trying to do here, and having some consensus, not like maybe awkward ID for people start to catch on, and similarly for other ones. So you don't have to have like 100 different IDs identifier to deal with for that particular entity.
Yeah, I think it makes you have to say out loud what the rules are, right? Like a journal should darn well include all the ORCIDs for every single author. Let's
Yes.
pick on you for a minute. We require the corresponding author as a mandatory metadata, but not everybody else. So there are tools for you to claim that as your paper. So that's great. But what if you had a journal, which exists? There are journals out there that don't require the ORCID nor give an opportunity for you to include it. Okay, maybe that's the use case for putting the ORCID into your CCO, maybe. But I hate that. I'd rather call the journal and say, listen, get your act together.
Yeah.
But again, this is a way for you to get around it. And then I think if we were able to give the relationship type, which is what they're working on right now, that Gay Peng is the corresponding author to this paper. The journal doesn't give a way to put the ORCID in, and the relationship is appropriate to the paper, then I think we could do it. But data's easy, software's easy. All of the things for digital objects are easy, and then you start adding in a ROR. Okay, ROR for what? ROR for the affiliations of each of the people, and for what? So they're working.
Yeah, it can get complicated very fast, but I think logically, if you do it in a more not convoluted way, just saying if there's a description, say I am institution, I use raw as my unique identifier, and here's a value. That probably is sufficient enough for now. But I think the way I see, there might be other way we can integrate it our effort, but having, we could try and, for what we do here is trying to encourage people to register for unique identifier and use them in their workflow. And maybe creating that norm would make it easier for the complex citation later on to develop the workflows. People are asking, what about associated with workflow, PID associated with workflow? That's another challenge. But I think for what we do so far is still just around the data set. That might be a good use case to consider. And if we can solve that, we can extend it, because that already includes so many different entities.
Well, here's one to throw to your group. And it's okay if you want to take some time to think about it. And this is a question that came up in, was it Brisbane? I think it was Brisbane or Costa Rica, one of the last two plenaries, RDA plenaries. So what I believe to be someone who's kind of new to this thinking, new to PIDs and new to metadata, but asked the perfect question, and that's, so the situation is this person had data in a reusable NOAA, data set, think of one. Somewhere else, a data set that's reusable, it's, good metadata and all that. They both have DOIs of some kind at some granularity that's useful. And there's plenty that are not useful, right? Like let's pick a simple example. They take data from both of these. So let's say it's not even all of it. So it makes it some more complex. It's a piece of it. Put it into an aggregated data set. And then they use that data set in their research. So the question is, what do you include in the reference section? And I can argue all 3 data sets. I can argue that. Or I can argue the aggregated data set, hopefully, like, I would encourage them to have used some software to do the selection criteria. And so you save that, right? The selection criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But then how do these primary data sets get credit for having been so important in this research? Like, yes. Okay, you could include those too, because, you should have. Okay, you can hear that. You can hear.
Well, that's a debate I've seen. Is like, how far do you go down, right? And most people say just 1 layer down, but then there are many layers underneath it, and I think we can talk about all day. So that's definitely a different discussion. I think perhaps when you get a little further along, we can invite you and Jonathan, maybe somebody else, back a little bit to give us update on the progress you made in term implementing it, how to get it back information that is similar to the credit we gave to authors. I think it's not just the data producers, it's also the software engineer that wrote the code, that created that data set, and the metadata specialist, curators that curated the data set to make it the way it is, like a metadata. And the whole, I think, ecosystem needs to be credited, and how we do that, how that being, like if you have somebody curating the data set for 30 years, and the person should be recognized for the work they do. How would that, how that going to be? I think it looks like we're making great progress, but we're still working through some of the things.
It's too hard. Yeah. But I would love to bring that back and partner with the cluster, because I remember the paper. Weren't you one of the co-authors on the paper Mark Parsons had written? And you were all working through the data set contribution list.
Artifact? No, I wasn't one of the co-authors, but I know which paper. Yeah, that's also another paper. I think, it's a part of the data stewardship committee. Yes, the contribution. Yeah.
There was not a definitive. There was great work. There was a lot of communication. But then it's like, oh, okay. Well, it's not that easy to do that.
Right.
So, yeah. It would be
no. I think giving you time, we probably would stop the discussion for now. There are a couple questions in the chat about the workflows. That seems to be another topic for maybe discussion at a later time. And thank you again. And Charlie, I'm going to move on to the next agenda. And so for people who have not logged your attendance, please do so. I'd appreciate it if you could do that in the session notes. Okay. So what I'm going to do is move on to, we have 30 minutes left. I will move on to the next part. And we have 3 templates created that we've been using to collecting the PIDs and rich metadata. I also created another one for data formats. And let me share my screen to go over them. Being recorded. I'm okay with that. Okay. So this is particular one is the the persistent identifier. At the top, if you tap the PID practices, the sheets, at the top of the sheets, it's about the level 1, level 2, the 5 levels of the practice. So this is the maturity level of that particular practice in terms of the PIDs, how the level 1 is rarely used. So you can use that as a reference when you fill up the templates. We already have people filling up the templates. I'm just going to use example I put it in, and we capture some of the assessment metadata, and like to have the what project. If you have a URL, that will help people to look at it later, and then the point of contact, the person's the ID, and I think most people use Occurred ID. If you don't have one, registering it at occurred.org is very straightforward, and put your name and the first day field, the last day. And then those are the entities, digital entities that one could assign ROR to. And for example, for the ESDS, we use ROR, but the maturity level is 2. The reason being that only some of the DACs use it, and there's no organization guidelines or the policy established. So even if quite a few number of DACs actually assign it, but we usually don't use it either. So I have the level 2 there. For data set, we use the DOI, and there's a policy, and there's it's almost like to the level 4, but don't want to stretch it, so I put the level 3 plus there, but it's more closer to 4 than 3. So the entities we put here, if you don't find any, you can always add another column at the end of the line there. So the idea is you can put in their additional rows at the end of this spreadsheets, and you can just pick one and start work on it. And if you're not sure, you can always talk to your friends or colleague and come back later if you have a question and ask me about it. So this is for the PID. For the rich metadata part, it's really just say, what are the fields are required, and what fields the naming convention in this the metadata schema in the organizations. If the project, you probably just have some fields, and for the organized, like for NASA, NCEI, some other in the federal, some agencies, and it's a lot more formal, but either one is fine. We're just trying to capture as many as practices as we could. So again, here you can add organizations if you're, if you have the additional, if you have one, you just add a column here and start to fill in. Let me see the chat. Okay, this is for Charlie. Again, if you have a question, and ask me, and we're hoping to use the rest of the time, maybe 25 minutes or so, to either review if you see your organization, the practice for your organization is already entered, but you have comments you like to put it there. You can either put it in notes or put it in the comments, or maybe talk to the person who entered and have a consensus what's the best way to put it. For the data format one, I just created, we haven't gone through the committee telecom yet. So here it's indicate some of the level of maturity for the data format, and you can put the practice, for example, if you guys use an SDF or you use the Excel, you use CSV for the data set your organization hosting, and if you have estimated maturity levels, how that format is being used, and that would help us to get a sense how widespread and how the data format is used in your organization. So I am going to stop here. See if there's any quick. Is there any question on the templates itself? Okay, so if there's no question, and I trust you to work away in the templates. The things some of the people are not interested in working in the templates, and perhaps I will see a couple things. As a closing remark is to mention that if you're interested, learn more, get an update for what we do. I do try to send out the before after telecoms. We have a monthly telecom on Monday, I think the second Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And if you are not part of the ESIP mailing list, and you can sign up for the mailing list, I have the link at the end of the meeting notes. And I also want to mention that next telecom February, I believe it's 9th, we have Dr. Wu from RDA, Metadata Interest Group, talk about the schema or crosswalks and analysis. And what they did was to crosswalk the EU-centered project schema, metadata schemas to the schema.org. So if you're interested in that topic, we'll be more than happy to have you here in the August telecom. And if you do sign up the attendance, and once we have the draft report published, then we will also push it out to you to let you know and get your feedback on it.